So let me start the recording. So while I am projecting my screen, you are on my other monitor. So still I am seeing you. So don't bother about turning off your camera and taking a nap in between. I am constantly watching you. Okay, so some things we were discussing related to SRM, and what we have figured out that the principle of operation for this switch reluctance motor is based on the property of that magnetic circuit where it can change the reluctance on its own once excited. So this is what we have seen in case of a C-core electromagnet, where we have a plunger which can move whenever the core is excited, and this can be utilized for having any mechanical work done. Now we have understood what are the principles behind this operation of this electromagnet, and then more into the switch reluctance motor. So where we have the stator and rotor which are operating on basis of the reluctance, on principle of reluctance. So we have understood the principles in terms of the change in inductance and where we should apply the current, what current we should apply. And then we have also seen the flux linkage, how it is changing, and what is beneficial for us to apply in terms of how much excitation we should give to our machine so that it is useful, and beyond the limit we actually starts going into disadvantage mode kind of area, where despite so much excitation, despite so much of current pumping in the core, the outcome may not be very good, and we may have actually several disadvantages related to our machine. So then we have tried to understand how different phases are defined and how the core combination or the pole combination of different machines could be. So we have seen a 4x6 SRM. So SRM is sometimes also called VRM, variable reluctance motor. The meaning is same. We are calling it switched because the current is going in a pulsed manner. So we are exciting only at certain duration and then we are taking it off. Then we have also seen 12x8 three-phase SRM, how the poles are decided, how the phases are decided, and how we can group different coils into a phase. So these things we have understood. Then we have also understood that some of the stator and rotor pole combinations may not be very good. Like there is a problem which may occur which is related to lockout. If let us say we have to start the motor from this position for this 4x2 reluctance motor, we cannot do anything. Just by giving excitation, nothing will move. So we need to intervene manually. So we need to slightly move and then this will start moving, rotating. Same thing happens if we have 2x4. So the meaning is whenever we have this ratio of stator to rotor pole or rotor to stator poles as integer, then we have this problem of lockout. So this we can avoid by having non-integer combination. So let us say 4x6, 12x8 or any other number. Sometimes we also see some odd numbers of poles coming into the system also. So that is also fine. For particular specific purpose, people design these kind of machines also, and those are also pretty well working in industry. So there is no problem. Then we have seen how we define our pole pitch, how to go with that, and then what we should understand by our machine when we are given the number of stator and rotor poles, what we actually understand from it, what is the step angle, with what accuracy we can operate that. So these are the things, and this actually slowly takes you towards another class of motor that is called stepper motor. Only difference between SRM and stepper motor is here you may have the reluctance torque and you may also have some permanent magnet installed on the rotor. These both things could be there on the rotor, and you have very precise angles. Let's say 2.4 degree or even so 360 is basically divided in so many parts. You have huge number of steps. So this is another class of motor where this principle, both the principles are used, the reluctance torque as well as the permanent magnet. These are some of the modern stepper motors I am talking about. And then the way of operation could also be little different because it is not purely only reluctance. So you have permanent magnet also. Then we can do lot many other things apart from having pulsed waveform. Sometimes for a stepper motor, if you go and search on TI website, they will have lot of motor drivers. So I am forgetting the IC number, but what they do basically, if they have two phases A and B, they will excite in a sinusoidal manner with 90-degree phase shift for the two currents, for the two phases A and B. And that is how they can get very precise, let's say something like 0.02 or maybe even 1 by some 100, these kind of angles they can very precisely control. So this is another class of motor which is based on the similar principles but driven in a very different manner. So they are very actively working on stepper motors. So till the time I was there last year, this was a very high or very strong area of research which was taken care or which was being conducted over there. So I may just check quickly if I have one data sheet. I will try to share here. Okay, so looks like this one particular data sheet I have. This is called some SLVA767A. This is little bit older device from TI. They have gone for much more advanced devices. So here they are doing this. If there are two phases, so there could be 6-wire or 4-wire combinations depending on what kind of motor we are having, and then they can operate it in different manners. So this is one of the ICs. They have now got lot of advanced ICs. Yeah, this L293D, this is perhaps the newer name what they are giving. So what they do basically, they excite the two phases together. So instead of having one excitation then second excitation like this, they can go for something like this where they are exciting both. So combination of both type of things, and then they can get, like, instead of 90-degree they can get some 45-degree of a step angle with the same phases. So something like this. This is half angle operation. You excite one, then you excite the another one with that, then you switch off the first one, keep the second excitation, then again excite the first one. So like that it will go on with a half step angle. So a much more precise operation could be, instead of having a DC values for the current, you change the currents in a sinusoidal manner. So if I show you the current, it may look like this. This is how the current is changing in steps, and you are having a very precise control for the step angle. So these are very much desired in the industry and people are using it, and there is huge demand for it, for these kind of motors and these kind of control. Now, how do we achieve these controls, that we will see today. So whether it is for the stepper motor or you are doing for traditional stepper motor, the principle for the control could be same. Now, this is one SRM which we were talking about, 4x6 and two phase SRM. So we have the LA and LB phases inductance changing in this manner. And then we saw that the currents in A and B could be phase shifted by 90-degree electrical. Mechanically, this one angle you can, this one segment you can call as 30-degree. Electrically, that one segment will be called as 180-degree. So basically from one point to reaching to the same point again. So then the waveform repeats. This we call as one electrical cycle. Mechanically, that could be a small fraction of 360 degree. So then what we do, we try to understand how these current levels are maintained and what we do to control these kind of motors. Another motor is related with this that I will come little later. So now what we are trying to do, that we are trying to have a pulsed current kind of thing in the coil. So in principle what we have a rotor. So I'm showing it circular, or maybe let us see if we can represent it kind of with poles like this. So these are different poles. Now you may have one coil and you may have another coil, and these are in quadrature electrically and physically also. If we see from the electrical angle point of view, let's say this is A, this is B. Now what we are trying to do, we are maintaining the current for the two coils at a fixed value alternatively, and that is how we are achieving the operation of SRM, or we are achieving the step angle for this SRM. Now whatever complicated change you go in this, instead of changing in one step, you may change slowly, or you excite this also before this ends to zero. Whatever you do, finally you need to maintain certain level of current for certain time. That is what you are ultimately doing if you see on a time axis, time versus current. Now generally this kind of control is taken care through the hysteresis control of current. So what this hysteresis control says that, and this is not magnetic hysteresis, please understand. Here what we are trying to do, we are, because it's a current, it's not voltage which we can apply a constant value and then it will remain at that level. So let's say this is the level at which we want to maintain the current for this duration. So what we do, we decide a band. Let us say there is some upper limit which we will not cross, and there is some lower limit that also we will not cross. So we will be keeping our current within this band. So if this is your nominal value, let's say I naught, I will call as this as IU, I upper and I lower. These are the limits for the current. Now what we do, we basically excite the coil, take the current to the highest value. The moment it reaches to the highest limit, we change the excitation, change the polarity of the voltage applied, so the current reduces and comes to the lower limit, hits the lower limit, and the moment it hits the lower limit, we again excite and take it back to upper limit. So it is kind of going up and down within this boundary, and on an average we are maintaining our I naught, similar to our DC-DC converter. And then the moment we are ending this cycle, we can then reduce and keep it zero. So this is what is called hysteresis control. In that we are having a hysteresis band. We are not changing anything at the nominal value. We are changing only at the upper boundary and at the lower boundary. While going up, the upper boundary is taken into action, and while coming down, the lower boundary is considered as the operating point or changing point. Now how do we do this? So in principle, what we have said, our motor is like two independent coils, let's say coil A and coil B. Here we are trying to maintain some current, let's say IA in this and IB in this. So then these are kind of independent coils, as long as in control we keep the sequence, we maintain the sequence properly in control. So what do I mean by that? So for each coil we can have independent converter. So let's say this is one coil and this is another coil. Now we are trying to maintain something similar to our DC-DC converter. So obviously we can have something like this, a pole attached to our inductor, and then we can have DC voltage connected like this. Now because we are changing polarity We are changing polarity of voltage applied across this inductor. So we need to have another pole, and something like this we can have. And this we can do for both the coils. So 2 H-bridge kind of configuration we can have for our SRM motor. So whatever number of phases you have, that many number of H-bridge you can have. Now there are different ways. See, one thing is when we want to have the current flowing in the inductor in only one direction, we actually do not need bidirectional switches on all the sides, because once the current is entering over here and going out over here, then this sequence is maintained. There is no possibility of current entering like this. This option is not there. Understanding my point? We have only unidirectional current over here. So we can have asymmetric bridge. What do I mean by asymmetric bridge? Let us say if we take MOSFET as our switch for this kind of circuit. So this is one option. You can simply choose 4 MOSFETs and that's all, because anti-parallel diode is already there. There is no issue with that. Now when you turn on this, let us say I call this A and this as A dash. So SA and SA dash. If you turn on these two switches, the current will flow in this direction. If you turn off, then these two diodes will start conducting. So let me mark the current directions. This is how the current will enter from here. And when you switch off S and SA dash, then the current will flow through the diodes. So flowing through the diodes means this coil will get connected to this orientation, like between plus VDC by 2, you can say, and minus VDC by 2. So VAA dash will be plus VDC when our SA and SA dash are on, and it will be minus VDC when it's complementary. Let's say SA bar and SA dash bar, these will be on. Obviously, the SA and SA bar are complementary, SA dash and SA dash bar are complementary. Now, if you notice, actually we do not need these MOSFETs. Even if you just switch off SA and SA dash, automatically the current will start flowing through the diode, because inductor current cannot be turned off immediately. So then instead of having MOSFETs in these two places, we can have the asymmetric arrangement, something like this. This is one option. Correct? So what we do, whenever our current is below our upper limit, let's say I is less than IU, we will keep our VAA dash equal to plus VDC. That means we can simply keep on increasing our current. This is the direction. And whenever the current hits this limit, the current has hit the limit. So we have changed our the sequence. So up to the time it is above IL, we will keep the lower limit. Then we will keep here VAA equal to minus VDC. So maybe graphically I will try to put this. What is happening when you have current increasing? Okay, you go and hit the upper limit. The moment you hit this upper limit, you will start coming down, which means you have applied this. There are only two options. Either you can increase the current or you can reduce the current. There is no third option as of now. Now, you are increasing until you hit this boundary IU. and you are reducing until you hit the boundary IL. So why we call it hysteresis? Because if you see on a graph where you are having this, how should I indicate? Let us say this is current. So these are the upper and lower boundaries, and you have your switch positions. So let's say this is plus VDC and this is minus VDC. So what you are doing when you are going up, you increase your current and reach up to plus VDC. The moment, so once you have hit the plus VDC, the current will increase from I lower to I upper. And the moment you hit this, you come back and try reducing this. So something like this you are going. I mean, yeah. So understanding this point or confusion is there, then I'll go in different way of telling this. Is it fine or shall I tell something more on this? Yes or no, what?
Or something more.
Okay.
So more, sir.
Okay. So now let us say you are doing this control. You have two options you have seen. VA dash is having two options, either plus VDC or minus VDC. Correct? You can call these two as states. Let's say state 1, state 2. Only these two states VA A dash voltage could be. Now you know when you apply VA equal to plus VDC, which means state 1, what will happen? Your current will increase. Understanding my point? And when you apply state 2, your current I will reduce. Understanding my point? Correct. So
Yes, sir.
while you are increasing your current, increasing means you are going from a lower value to higher value. I am not saying which lower value, because you may start from 0 also. So whichever lower value you are starting, if you are going towards the higher value, then you will see IU as the limit. And when you are reducing the current, which means you are coming down from the IU, then you will see the lower IL as your limit. If the cycle falls within this time interval where you have to maintain the current. If this is the time interval over which you have to maintain the current, so you have to match the condition. First condition is you are within this interval. Within this interval, what you have to do? You have to maintain the current. Now, the moment this interval starts, you start increasing your current. You check what is the value of current. It is lower than IU, you start increasing. And then the moment it hits IU, you have to come back. So if I put it in logic terms, because these are discrete logic, there is no linear logic or something. This is not there. Linear control is not there. Here we are going into discrete steps. We have only two options that we are taking as of now. So what you do, if let us say your current is less than, for suppose first we take that within this interval is less than IU. So what you do, you have to apply VA dash equal to plus VDC. Understanding my point? Then how should I tell that? Okay, there will be another step over here, because you need to see the previous state. Okay, let me put it in different way. Leave all this. Okay, let us go and take a fresh look at this. What are the options available and what we are trying to do. Okay, for suppose you have this coil where you have to maintain certain value of current, and this is your VA dash voltage. So options what we have is that if VA is plus VDC, our current is going to increase. If it is minus VDC, it is going to reduce. This we know. Now when we have to apply this state 1 and when we have to apply this state 2, this we have to decide in a discrete manner. Discrete manner means because we are not going into a linear control. We have a boundary to satisfy instead of a fixed number. So we are increasing from this some point, we are going hitting the boundary, coming back and oscillating like this. Now we are calling this upper boundary as IU, lower boundary as IL. Now what you have to do, you have to go something like a latching circuit. Latch you have understood, no? You understand what I mean by latch? It is not simple if else or and or logic. This is not like that. It will be decided on what is the previous state and what is the next state what you have to keep. Understanding my point? This is clear? Is this you understand?
Yes, sir.
Now let us say your previous state, let me call as SP, is 1. Which means what? You are increasing this current. You have applied VA dash is equal to plus VDC. This is the meaning of state 1. If your previous state is 1 and your current is less than I upper, then you will keep the next state also as the previous state, which means you will not change this state. You will continue in the same state. Else, what you will do? You will change the next state to 2, which means apply minus VDC because it has hit the boundary. Getting my point? This is 1. If you are in state 1, you will follow this logic. Now, if you are in state 2, let's say your previous state is 2, and if your current is more than your I lower limit. So then what we will do, we will continue reducing because still we are reducing and we have not hit this boundary, lower boundary. So we will continue next state as previous state. Else, we will again change the next state to 1. This you understand? Understanding my point?
Yes, sir.
This is clear or somebody is having confusion?
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Say again, Naveen.
Clear, sir.
Okay, someone else was saying something? So simple meaning is, if you are going upward, which means you are increasing the current, that is your state 1, then you will continue to increase until you hit this boundary. Once you hit this boundary, you satisfy this condition, then you change the state. You start reducing, which means now you are here. Your state is latched. And you will continue coming down up to this condition is met, which means you are now little lower than IL, just touching the boundary. And the moment you touch this boundary, you will change the state again. Understanding my point?
Yes, sir.
Someone is saying something. I'm not able to hear. Okay, so this is fine, right? Any confusion in this?
No, sir.
Any confusion
No,
in
sir.
it? Okay. You understood the meaning of this, what I'm trying to say? So your action, which means what voltage you will apply, that will be decided on basis of your previous state. This is the basis of discrete control. When you are going in applying discrete steps on your coil, discrete voltages on your coil. This is not the PWM where we are trying to maintain some average value kind of thing or constant switching frequency kind of thing. Here the interval could be different. Let us say while going or coming down, because L is this is constant, so it may take little longer or smaller time. That is a different thing. But because it is changing, so sometimes the intervals may change slightly because our L is varying. No, when you have L di by dt equal to V, so delta I. So every change in delta I, despite keeping the same V, because L is changing, so this may change or this interval may change if you are keeping delta I constant. So rise and fall could be different because we are operating on different L values at different points. Understanding my point? Is this clear? So that is why the switching frequency of this converter may change. Any hysteresis control based converter may have variable switching frequency. This is in general true. So it is not fixed that you will have same interval for this. Yes, of course, if your theta is very small over which you are moving, if your operation, this time period for which you are maintaining this constant T or theta mechanical, you say if this is very small, then of course the change in L, what you are observing delta L, that also will be very small. Then you may say that okay, the rising and falling intervals are almost same. Otherwise, it is not necessary to have rise and fall intervals same. It may change because you are operating on different L. Your L is varying from minimum to maximum. Remembering this, right? This is clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Good.
Excuse me, sir. Hello.
Yes.
Sir, so it will affect the area of hysteresis loop also.
Which hysteresis loop?
Means that you told before that you have written that plus VDC to minus VDC, then back to minus VDC to plus VDC.
Yeah, I mean that I myself is not very clear how I will draw that, but let me just think about it a little more before commenting on that. So what idea is that if you are going in one direction, you will continue until you hit one this state. Let's say this is, let's say, this current limit. This is the upper and this is the lower. So you will continue going in this direction until you hit this limit. The moment you hit this limit, you will change and start going in this direction until you hit the lower limit. And then you will change the state and you will go on like this. So the meaning of hysteresis is if you are going in this direction, increasing current, you will go until you hit the upper limit. And if you are reducing the current, you are going in this direction, you will continue going until you hit the lower limit. That is the essential meaning of hysteresis. We don't have a fixed point. If going in this direction, reduce hysteresis. And that is what I said by which state we are in. The state means what we are actually doing presently. So presently, if we are increasing the current, we will continue increasing it until we hit the upper boundary. And if we are reducing the current, we will continue reducing the current until we hit the lower boundary. That is the whole meaning of hysteresis. So it is a discrete control. There is no fixed switching frequency because we are anyway operating for a variable value of L. But there are another control ways where we can go for constant switching frequency or maintaining something like that. So those things also people practice sometimes. Those things are also available. Now another important point here is that when we are operating within these bands, this is another important thing to understand. These are our upper and lower boundaries. Let's say I have exaggerated this time interval up to this time t we have to do. Now our coil, which is there, it may have some resistance R. By default, it will have something, let's say RC I am calling, and we are giving some VAA. Now for increasing the current, which means when we are going up, there is no other way than applying VA dash is equal to plus VDC. There is no other way. We have to apply this voltage, then only our current will continue rising. Now for reducing the current, there are two options. One is called fast decay and another is called slow decay. So what is meaning of fast decay? What we have done so far, which means applying minus VDC. This is the meaning of fast decay. That means our slope is much faster. It is coming down so quickly and then going up with the same rate and then coming down. So these two slopes could be very, very close if L is not changing very much. For reluctance motor, these could be different, but not so different because these intervals are very, very small. Within this, the change in L is not very appreciable. So these may be different, but not so different. That is called the fast decay, where we are applying minus VDC across the coil. Now, there is no such need that we need to apply minus VDC only to reduce the current. Let us say this is the coil having some resistance R, L, and it is having some current I, some excitation. If we simply short this current, short this coil, what will happen? Because of R, this current will automatically start decaying without applying any voltage, which means we short the coil, apply zero voltage, VA dash is equal to 0. So we have shorted the coil. So our current will reduce on account of this R, the resistance in the coil. Time constant will be L by R. This you understand, right? Now what will happen? Our current, instead of following this fast decay, it will be something like slow decay. And then again, the moment it hits this boundary, again you go for the fast charging. Charging is anyway that same rate plus VDC. But decay, again you can have a much slower. Understanding my point? So what advantage we are getting with this slow decay? We are not switching unnecessarily in between. So this will help in reducing some of the switching losses. So let's say if I draw that converter circuit and what we are doing. So let's draw the full bridge first. So here what we have done, we have turned on this SA and SA dash. So the coil is having this kind of current. So one mode of connection is this. This is our charging mode, charging the coil. That means current is increasing. This is first mode. Then second mode could be when we apply these two switches, which means SA dash bar and SA bar. So then our mode will be something like this. This is our second mode, where VAA is equal to minus VDC. You see the orientation of the coil is changed now. These are the terminals AA dash and these are the terminals AA dash. You are now applying minus VDC across the coil. Here you were applying VAA dash is equal to plus VDC. Now, third mode which I am telling, that could be something like this. Here is your VDC, which is open, it's not connected. The coil current is reducing on account of the small coil resistance. This is the third mode, where you have VA dash is equal to 0. This is what is called slow decay. So when you have very fast operating speed and you don't have time to turn on and turn off the devices so many times, or you have constraints of switching losses that it is going too much beyond your control, then this option of slow decay is taken into account. Understanding my point? So how we do? We simply turn on these two. You don't switch off.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sir, means technically there is no point of fast decay. Means why we go for fast decay?
Yes.
Means ultimately our main aim is to keep the current in a specific band. So it
Correct.
will be in slow decay also. Sir, means what is the point of fast decay?
Correct. That is true. Now the point is fast decay you have to keep when you need to reduce the current to 0 very quickly. This is where you certainly need fast decay. Another requirement for fast decay is when you want more controlled variation of current within this. Sometimes when the companies are designing these ICs, which I showed you from TI and other companies, the current sensing could be in a very different manner. They will be sensing current through the MOSFET. So if you don't turn on the MOSFET, the current sensing will not happen. So you will not have any measure of where the current is going. That could be another constraint why you need to turn on this fast decay. Understanding? So 2-3 reasons are, one is you want a more controlled variation of current instead of relying on the resistance. So it may remain stuck on this for a very long time.
Okay, sir.
Understanding?
Yes, sir.
So, and then another thing is current sensing. Sometimes the current sensing is done through the device, through the MOSFET, and not through the diode. There are no separate current sensors installed on the converter. It is getting sensed through the device, through the FET. So these are little bit more involved kind of things where they use this fast decay as their mode of control. But yes, as such what you said, Samir, this is true. There is no strict requirement other than this when the time interval is ending.
Yes, sir.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So we may choose to have all three modes of decay, all three modes of operation for the coil for different requirements. So mode 1 certainly we need. There is no choice for mode 1. But we can opt between mode 2 and mode 3 time to time, or whatever we want. Understanding my point?
Yes, sir.
Good. So then, if there is any question within this, you can ask now. This is how we do control for SRM motors. So both the coils, they will be controlled independently, but keeping the phase shift there in current, they will be controlled in hysteresis mode. So you maintain this current level for coil A like this and coil B for like this in between, wherever coil current A is not there. And then you apply the hysteresis control for these coils independently. So you can have one H bridge for this and one H bridge for this. If you have more number of phases, so that many number of H bridge could be there. So the H bridge configuration could be symmetric, similar to what we have seen over here. It could be symmetric, or it could be asymmetric, what we have seen in the previous case. Something like this. Something like this. So we can have both modes of operation, mean all three modes of operation, all different modes of configuring our converter and so on. Sometimes what they do, in the more advanced control where they try to reduce number of devices, they may attach two H bridges together. So which means maybe 3 legs controlling 2 coils, something like that. So these are different ways how they do SRM control. Is that clear? Fine. Any questions up to this? Any questions up to this?
No, sir.
Okay, good. Now I will take a quick overview of what all we have seen so far. And that will put up the background for what we are going to do next. So we started with DC motor, then we had induction motor, then we discussed SRM, some part of stepper and so on. So basically what we are doing, we are addressing different principles by which the motion is happening. So first principle is, let us say for the DC motor, you have magnets kept on the stator, could be a permanent magnet or could be the field winding, and then you have coil on the armature or on the rotor, so with the slip rings which is giving the motion. So here we have permanent magnet and the coil which is having the motion because we have current carrying conductor which is falling within this field. So we have a force coming on the conductor because of this principle. Understanding my point? This was first thing what we understood for the DC motor. Although we did not go into detail of this, but this is what the basic principle is. Second, we have seen the reluctance motor where we are having the number of poles on the stator and then number of poles on the rotor. So on account of this varying reluctance, this is generating torque, and that is how the motion is happening. This is not induction, definitely. When you have this C core and the plunger, it's not necessary that this conducts. Conduction property is not important for this. What is important is that it should be magnetic, which means ferromagnetic or at least paramagnetic. So it can take some flux. It should not be diamagnetic. For example, if you keep aluminum plunger over here, that will not move. That will have no effect. Understanding my point? If you are applying a DC excitation over here. So the property which is required over here is it should be magnetic in nature. So this is on the basis of reluctance we are having, that SRM motor or VRM motor. Now in the same motor, when we have different poles, with the lump winding, we can have rotor, instead of having poles or magnetic projections, we can have magnet installed on this. Let's say 2 poles only, north and south, permanent magnets planted on this. Now what will happen if you rotate the motor, if you rotate the rotor, you will have EMFs induced on these coils, some which I call as back EMF. Why there will be induced EMF? Because again, the principle is same. You have some flux linkage changing. So because of that, you will have EMF. This is how your flux linkage will change. And so because of this, you will have some DC voltage generated on the coils. So till the time this is varying, it will be like this. Again, when it is reducing, it will be like this. So something like this, it may have. Now, in more practical motors, this may be little trapezoidal. Instead of a flat square wave, it could be little trapezoidal. So this is what gives rise to your another class of motor, which is called brushless DC. Why brushless DC? This is actually not a DC motor, but what we are pretending, the current which we inject for operation, that is kind of pulsed current. Plus I minus I. Because these levels are DC, so sometimes these are called DC motor. But there is no commutator, that's why this is brushless DC. This is another class of motor where the control could be very similar to SRM. The stepper motor is something combination of these two, SRM plus your BLDC kind of configuration. Something like a combination of these two that we have seen. So the control of BLDC could be very similar to that. Then there could be another configuration possible for the stator and rotor. Let's say your stator is there with winding which is not concentrated. So your rotor is having this north and south magnets, poles of the magnet, and here your winding, instead of having concentrated winding, you distribute it throughout the stator. Something similar to your induction motor. Then whatever flux linkage you are getting as this, you may have a more sinusoidal variation over here. And on account of this, your EB will also become sinusoidal. Maybe phase shifted, of course. Understanding my point? This kind of configuration where you have permanent magnet on the rotor, there could be more poles also, and you have distributed winding coming on the stator. So different phase we can define, and this is what gives rise to the permanent magnet synchronous motor. Why synchronous motor? Because these motors are generally operated at the synchronous speed. And because permanent magnet is there on the rotor, so these are called PMSM. These are very similar to our traditional synchronous motors, except that our traditional synchronous motor is having electromagnet on the rotor. Understanding my point? So then next class we will start our discussion on control aspects of PMSM. We may quickly discuss what types of PMSM could be there, how the magnet is mounted on the rotor, and then we will go into the modeling and control of PMSM. And from here we will proceed towards, which is another similar type of control, the control of induction motor. So in both these cases we are going to have vector control, which will be our point of discussion. Fine. Any questions? Any questions, any suggestions?